Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this regular meeting of Council of the Municipality of Jasper for February 20th, 2024. It is 1:30 p.m. and I will call this meeting to order. Councillors, you have today's proposed agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or other changes to be made to the agenda? Councillor DeMota.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was going to ask to have a couple of items added to new business, but they were going to be in forms of a motion anyway, so I think that they would be probably better suited to fit under 7, as we don't have any more numbers to fit under 6 for today's agenda, unless we added some more points after them. So 7.1 activity center project update. And then, so that would be 7.1, and then 7.2, Councillor absentee request. Dash Rico DeMota.
Thank you for that, Councillor DeMota. Any other changes to be made to the agenda? Not. I have a motion first to amend the agenda by adding items 7.1 and 7.2.
I'll do that.
Thank you, Councillor DeMota. All in favor? There is no one opposed. That is carried. Can I have a motion then to approve the agenda for today's meeting as amended? Councillor Melnick, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. We have, I think, 4 sets of minutes for approval today, beginning with the minutes of the regular meeting of January 16, 2024. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? Seeing nothing, may I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes of the January 16, 2024 regular council meeting as presented? Councillor Waxer, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. We have the minutes of the Committee of the Whole from January 23rd, 2024. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? Seeing nothing, may I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes of the February 13, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting as presented? Councillor Keller-Grampy, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. We have minutes of the special council meeting of January 23rd, 2024 before us. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? Seeing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes of the January 20, pardon me, the February 3rd, the January 23rd special meeting of council as presented. Councillor Keller-Grampy, thank you. All those in favor? And finally, we have the Committee of the Whole meetings minutes from February 13, 2020. Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to make note. I believe we need to review motion number 48 that are recorded in the minutes. In that, I believe the motion was made to direct administration to reconfigure the Cannot Drive. Sorry, the motion was made to turn the parking lot on Cannot Drive, turn oversized lots into paid parking stalls. What's recorded as a motion is that the committee directed administration to reconfigure the Cannot Drive 200 block parking lot into oversized parking stalls into regular sized paid parking stalls. I don't believe that the motion is reflected accurately, and I just want to make sure that that the motion that was made by Councillor Waxer is recorded appropriately, or should it have a few words taken out of the motion?
Thank you, Councillor Melnick. Councillor Waxer?
I apologize if I wasn't clear last week, but what the motion that I made, thought I was making anyway, was that, to turn or to have the oversized parking stalls, become paid parking. I don't believe that I included the reconfiguration or, at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waxer. Councillor Melnick?
Thank you, Worship. And with that, I'd like to commend administration over the last 2.5 years for having all of our motions recorded accurately. This was one where we were in a debate back and forth, and it would be very easy for councillors as well as administration to be to assume that something was being voted on that wasn't meant to be included. And I think at this point, if I may suggest, we may want to re-vote on this motion, because I think some councillors may believe that they were voting to have the Cannot Drive 200 block reconfigured. But in fact, that was not the motion that was made. And if I'm incorrect, I stand to be corrected.
Thank you, Councillor Melnick. Because of your astuteness in your email, I went back and listened to the tape, and I think that the minutes reflect the initial motion, which was then rescinded. And the motion on which we voted was to turn the oversized stalls into paid parking stalls. If everyone here understands that's what they voted on, I think we can correct the minutes. If somebody thinks they voted on reconfiguration, which was the initial motion, then rescinded, and perhaps we then further down that road. Is there anyone who thinks they were voting on other than a simple motion to turn the oversized stalls on that Cannot Drive 200 block parking into paid parking stalls? Councillor Paul?
Thank you. I thought I was, and I did go back and look as well when Councillor Melnick sent us the email, and I would vote in favor of turning them into paid parking stalls, not to reconfigure them.
Subject to your comments, Councillor Melnick, I think if we adjust the minutes to reflect the motion that we actually voted on, that probably clears up any lingering doubt. So if you wanted to make a motion to amend the minutes to reflect that.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would make the motion that the minutes be amended to reflect that the motion was that committee directed administration to turn the oversized parking stalls into paid parking stalls in the Cannot Drive 200 block parking lot. I'll leave it at that.
Councillor Gordon.
This might be a good example. There are other people here that weren't present at our legislative committee meeting today, but I brought up the instance about committee directing administration to make financial decisions. And even though this isn't a particular financial decision, it does have financial impact to the budget. And I'm not sure if we're really on side through the procedure bylaw in that way. And there is some ambiguity that will probably allow us to do that. But we are changing a service, and I think that those decisions should be made at council. And so if that was the intent, to bring this to council to make the decision when we finally get to do that, because this was that committee, correct? Yeah, let's just make it. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So on the motion to amend the minutes, Is there any debate on that motion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Could I have a motion then to approve the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting of February 13, 2024 as amended? Councillor Melvin?
Thank you, Your Worship. I will make that motion.
Is there any debate on that motion? Call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 4, correspondence. We have a letter from the Association of Mountain Park Protection and Enjoyment. Any discussion, observations, questions regarding the letter? Councillor Melvin?
Thank you, Your Worship. In looking at the letter and the request, I see in the letter from AMPI that there are direct references for a study to address permitting access on the Icefield Parkway, winter road maintenance, cell reception, avalanche control, and communications. And then as I read through the proposal from the consultants, I note that there is some vague reference in the first portion for the $6,000 of the work program. But then those particular items, which seem to be important for this survey to be done, for this consulting work to be done, are not in the actual performance of the consultancy work. I did note at the end of the proposal by the consultancy, they did close by saying, we thank you for the opportunity to provide you with the work programs to assist with your approach to address Icefield Parkway issues and needs. If you are in agreement with the proposed fees and the work program, please date and sign this document. It basically, when I was looking at this, it sounds like they're looking for opportunities to have work done on a project that relates to cycling down the parkway, but not necessarily addressing the 5 items that I identified as the concerns of Jasper businesses. So I would hesitate to support this, also noting that the Icefield Parkway includes both Banff National Park and the Banff Lake Louise Tourism Bureau, both of which are not funding partners in this particular proposal. So to open conversation, I would suggest that this is not something that I would support.
Thank you, Councillor Melvin. Councillor Keller-Renton?
I think MP needs to approach the partners on the Icefield Parkway also, you know, I mean, like we have Pursuit, we have Sundown, we have housing and accommodations on there, that this is very important to. I think this should be a collective of I'm not opposed to the municipality contributing towards it, but I don't think that Tourism Jasper and the municipality should be the only people supporting this. I think it needs to be a collective of everybody involved.
Thank you, Councillor Keller-Renton. Councillor Demota?
Thank you, Worship. Could this be an opportunity for us to advance this, maybe to receive it and then bring it forward to the Jasper Partnership Initiative, considering all the groups that are represented there, and can have a broader discussion on the importance of this? I think it shouldn't just lay here alone, and I think you're right, Councillor, that we should have a broader discussion and talk about, you know, more parties that are invested in this or could be.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Do you wish to make a motion to refer this to the Jasper Partnership Initiative?
Sure. Or would it be proper to receive it as information first and then,
Yes.
yeah, okay, so I move that council receive the funding for the study on the Icefields Parkway as information and refer this to the next Jasper Partnership Initiative meeting.
Thank you for that motion, Councillor Devota. Any debate? I'll call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Agenda item 5, delegations. We have no delegations scheduled. Agenda item 6, new business. We have lots, beginning with 6.1, affordable housing advocacy. Mr. Gibbon.
Your worship, I'll introduce these. These are actually recommendations from committee, so not completely new business, although it's been a while, so it might feel like it's new business. The item here is that committee had recommended that council authorize the mayor write a letter to the Minister of Alberta Seniors, Community and Social Services, requesting the government of Alberta affordable income thresholds for Jasper be increased to match those of Banff beginning in 2024. As a refresher for council and community, the government of Alberta annually establishes the thresholds of income that define, the maximum that a person can earn and still qualify for subsidized housing. Examples of subsidized or affordable housing in Jasper would be MPL Place or some of the Grand Spirit Seniors spaces. So as the report, and we've attached, again, recognizing that it's been a while, we attached the report that was originally presented to committee to the council agenda. You can see in the report, there's a table that shows out of the existing CNIT, core needs income threshold amounts. Banff, for one bedroom, the maximum allowable income for a person to still qualify for affordable housing is $65,000. In Jasper, it's $42,000. In essence, this means that once you earn $42,000 in Jasper, you no longer qualify for subsidized housing under the province's metrics. The argument here would be that Banff and Jasper are very similar and they have very highly constrained and expensive housing markets. And people work a lot in Jasper and Banff, and they may be able to earn more and still not be able to afford housing. And so that's why the recommendation, I believe, was supported by committee. This is within the power of the minister to be able to change. And I think the argument is that the province should recognize that both Jasper and Banff are very unique. They do recognize that in some other documentation that's referenced in the report. And so that's a brief background for council as a refresher back from last time we spoke about this.
Thank you for that, Mr. Gibbon. Any further questions of administration on this? As Mr. Gibbon indicated, this is a recommendation to council from committee.
Do you have any concerns, Your Worship?
Councillor Waxer.
I'd be prepared to make the motion that council authorize the mayor to write a letter to the Minister of Alberta Seniors, Community and Social Services, requesting that the government of Alberta affordable income thresholds for Jasper be increased to match those of Banff beginning in 2020.
Thank you for the motion, Councillor Waxer. Any debate? I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. In preparation of writing that letter, Mr. Gibbon, there is a fairly long quote on the second page of the request for decision. I ask administration to forward me a link to that entire document.
Yes, your worship, absolutely. And for the public, if they're interested in the Alberta Apartment Vacancy and Rental Cost Survey, which is where we pull that, you can also find a link in this agenda package. It's highlighted there, but we can certainly provide that to you so you can pull it out in context from the government of Alberta's own information where they recognize the unique nature of Jasper and Banff.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. All right, agenda item 6.2. Childcare advocacy. Again, coming to council, I think a recommendation from committee, Mr. Gibbon.
Your worship, again, this is feeling a little bit aged because it did come from committee a while ago. Director Reed's here to be able to support the conversation as well, but there was an overall approach to childcare advocacy. Council had asked administration to provide some recommendation on what approaches could be taken. That was a motion action list item. And there were essentially 4 different approaches. First was to write the Minister of Child and Family Services to request the government appoint a municipal childcare representative to the ELC Advisory Committee. The council also write the Minister of Children and Family Services, the West Yellowhead MLA and Yellowhead MP to request provincial and federal governments provide capital funding to support the creation of new physical spaces for childcare. The council supports submitting a request for decision. Hint, that's the next item on the agenda list, I think, to the Alberta Municipalities Spring Municipal Leaders Caucus, calling on the government of Alberta to establish a capital grant program. And then finally to collaborate with other municipal childcare providers in our region in advocacy efforts. So that's the broad outlines of the advocacy approach that was presented by administration and is being recommended forward here for committee.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbon. Are there questions from Council of Administration? Councillor Waxer.
I'll make another motion that council approve the early learning and childcare bilateral agreement advocacy approach as presented.
Thank you for that motion. Councillor Waxer, did you wish to speak to it at all?
Just that I think it is very important, and in the community here, lots of young families who are struggling to access childcare and making very convoluted arrangements in order to be able to work or putting off work. So I think that it is critical for now and into the future that we have adequate stock of childcare spaces for our community.
Thank you, Councillor Waxer. Any debate on the motion? I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Takes us to agenda item 6.3. Childcare space creation funding advocacy request for decision. Again, Mr. Gibbon.
I was just joking with Director Reed that I'll let him get on the score sheet. He'll introduce this item.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. So indeed, the item that was just passed indicated advocacy efforts that could be made. And this particular item is coming right in front of Council now because the spring caucus of the Alberta Munis does happen fairly quickly. And so there is a deadline on submitting this. As Council heard last week, what we're proposing is, what we've suggested is that we would advocate to this Alberta Munis Spring Caucus to advocate to the province for an increased capital fund to support childcare space development throughout the province. And I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Director Reed. Do you have the dates of that upcoming Leaders Caucus?
14th. March 14th.
And are we required to present in person? Is there anybody scheduled to be here?
Your worship, I'm not sure if there's anybody that was planning on attending. We, from the administration side, certainly haven't scheduled any council members to attend. I think it would be subject to council choosing to support this. I think it's fair to note that if council supports this resolution, we would need to be able to be there, just have somebody there to speak to it, introduce it.
Councillor Conlon?
Thank you, Your Worship. There's two opportunities to attend this particular Alberta Municipality Leadership Conference. I've actually registered to attend virtually. So if there's an opportunity to present virtually, I could do that. And if not, I'm actually free and could attend the conference in Red Deer, I believe it is. I may be wrong on its location, but I am planning to attend virtually. And if we can get clarity as to presenting, I'll adjust my plans accordingly.
Thank you. Director Reid?
Your worship, if I may add further to the information from Councillor Melnick. We will know once we submit as to what the requirements for the presentation are. And as soon as we hear back, of course, council will be fully informed. I believe it's actually in Edmonton, this particular event.
Thank you for that. Any other questions of administration regarding the advocacy request to the Alberta Municipalities Spring Municipal Leaders Caucus? I had a question about the request for decision to be submitted. In the opening line of the background material, it references a shortage of approximately 50,000 childcare spaces. Can that be attributed? We put a footnote and say where we got that information.
Your worship, that's a great point. We can certainly do that. And I can tell you that it's both of the overall number, the 68.7 we got from the province itself, and the province's latest information gave us the roughly 50. They've created about 18,000. So
Thank you for that. If there are no further questions, is there a councillor prepared to make a motion? Councillor Waxer?
Okay, council support submitting the attached request for decision to the Alberta Municipality Spring Leaders Caucus.
Thank you for that motion, Councillor Waxer. Is there any debate? I will call a question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 6.4, Jasper Municipal Housing Corporation shareholders resolutions. Mr. Gibbon, do you want to lead us through this?
Sure, Your Worship. This one's a little fresher, coming from the most recent committee of the whole meeting. So there are a number of different resolutions that are all a part of setting up the Jasper Municipal Housing Corporation. Those include resolutions 2004-1 to 2004-3, which all have to do with the unanimous shareholders agreement. 2004-4, which is the election of directors. 2004-5, which is the Jasper Municipal Housing Corporate Bylaw number 1. 2004-6, the ratification of directors acts, and 2004-7, the change of directors. And Your Worship, I may have jumped ahead. Sorry, I was thinking about the shareholder resolutions. You may have asked for item 6.4, the shareholder policy itself, which is actually important because it tells how council is making its decisions on the shareholder resolutions that follow. So let me just revise my intro there. So the shareholder policy identifies how the municipality will act in its role as shareholder of the corporation. In typical corporate structures, there may be many shareholders, and they have a shareholder meeting to make decisions and resolutions to provide direction to the corporation that they own. In the case of the Municipality of Jasper, there's a single shareholder, the Municipality of Jasper, and the policy identifies how the Municipality of Jasper will make decisions as a shareholder, and then who is authorized to provide those decisions to the corporation. And so as you see here, all shareholder resolutions need to come through committee and council in a public forum, and that those motions, those resolutions are provided via motion, endorsed at a public council meeting. And then upon approval at a public council meeting, those are provided in writing to the corporation for the corporation's records and can be signed by either the mayor and the deputy mayor or the mayor and one councillor. The intent of the policy is to ensure that there's clarity between council's role as elected officials and representatives of the community of the council, and as council as the shareholder of the corporation. I'm happy to answer any questions about the policy.
Are there questions of councillors for administration? Councillor Melvin?
Thank you, Worship. Seeing no questions, I'd be willing to forward the motion that council approve the Jasper Municipal Housing Corporation shareholder policy as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Melvin. Is there any debate? All right, I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 6.5, which is where you wanted to get to, Mr. Gibbon, which is the resolutions.
I'll wind that all up again. Your worship, now that we have a shareholder policy that defines how the municipality can conduct business as a shareholder corporation, we have those resolutions that I previously described. These are all resolutions on behalf of the shareholder of the corporation, and they really are involved with setting up the fundamental framework of how the corporation will operate. The one adjustment from committee, a couple of the documents have been updated, and I'll just point out those updates to you. First is in the unanimous shareholders agreement, which describes the relationship between the Municipality of Jasper and the Jasper Municipal Housing Corporation. We've used track changes there where you can see an update to the date of the articles to reflect the actual date of submission the actual date of the incorporation of the corporation, the 20th of October, 2023. There was an update under 1.01I. The reference definition of Connaught facility means the building to be owned by the Connaught Project Corp. This is the corporation, and then Connaught Project Corp is defined below. And under Article 2.01, appointment of directors, there's an addition to the end of that paragraph that says the MOJ has the sole and unfettered right to elect, appoint, or remove any director from time to time. The addition is, comma, in its role as the shareholder of the corporation. So just again, providing that specificity, and we've already just discussed through policy how the municipality acts as a shareholder. And I believe that was all of the items that were changed in the unanimous shareholders agreement. And maybe I'll just pause there. We'll discuss any changes to the bylaw when we get to the corporate bylaw, rather than confuse the issue more, because I know there's a bunch of resolutions altogether here.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbon. Councillor Moda?
Yeah, just on that very last note about the appointment of the membership. Did we clarify if that includes councillors? Or does that need to be clarified in that statement?
So the directors of the corporation can be any part of the council wishes to appoint, for the purpose of the unanimous shareholders agreement. That's up to council to choose how many councillors they wish to appoint. And you can see in the further recommendations that it's going to be 2 councillors and 5 external directors.
Yeah, there's just one piece of wording. That's fine, I'm clear.
Other questions? Mr. Given, I have a question and I regret that it didn't occur to me. I could have asked it a week ago. But and it doesn't impact the unanimous shareholders agreement, but just in terms of structure. There will be a Jasper Municipal Housing Corporation and the Connaught Project Corporation. Connaught Project Corporation will own the building. The unanimous shareholders agreement seems to be silent as to who has the lease, if it is a lease. So are we anticipating that municipality will negotiate the release of that land to the Municipal Housing Corporation or to the Connaught Project Corporation?
Your worship, I think that's still to be determined. The municipality certainly is the one actively having that discussion with Parks Canada. We have taken the steps to initiate an appraisal of the land, and that as the prerequisite to being able to establish a lease and what the land release fee would be. Before we enter into that land release agreement, then we would determine which is the right party to hold the lease.
Thank you for that.
My suggestion, your worship, again, recognizing there's a number of different things. We do have a little bit to discuss on bylaw number 1. Council may wish to deal with the shareholder resolutions in sort of the sub bullets that there are there, those dealing with the unanimous shareholders agreement, and then deal with that as one motion, and then move on to the next motion dealing with the election of directors and so on.
Thank you for that, Mr. Given. Is there a councillor prepared to make a motion that council approve unanimous shareholders? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. Any debate on that motion? That's sufficient for administration? Thank you. I'll call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. So that gets us the USA. Next on your list, Mr. Given.
Yes, your worship. The next is resolution 2004-4. It references the election of directors as of October 20th, 23. So at that time, Councillor Wilson and Melnick were identified as directors of the JCHC. And when we filed the paperwork with the province for the incorporation, they were the names listed as directors. After that, council at its organizational meeting appointed Councillor Demoda as a director. And so you'll see that in 2004-7, we have a motion to sort of deal with that change. But we need to acknowledge that the shareholders supported the previous directors at October 20th, 2023. And those directors were Councillor Wilson, Councillor Melnick. So this resolution is acknowledging that past act as a shareholder, and then the appointment will be pretty short from one of our council members because it'll be formally changed in the final resolution that we have in front of us today.
Thank you, Mr. Given. Are there any questions of administration regarding this proposed motion? Councillor Demoda?
If we could just get a little assistance as a friendly marker when it comes to our organizational meeting, that just as a reminder that those appointments are extended to the end unless committee at that time or at the organization would like to make a change. So that does throw off, that does cause a little bit more work administratively when it comes down to that. We went through a little bit, but kind of jumping through hoops to get that rectified and here today. So
I'm sorry, are you suggesting there's another step we?
I just, as a marker for the next one, just say like, I will be on that unless council decides otherwise. Or actually the mayor, because it's your appointment.
If there are no other questions, is there a councillor prepared to make a motion electing directors as Scott Wilson and Ralph Melnick as of October 20th, 2023? Thank you, Councillor Kalahari. See no hands for debate. I'll call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Mr. Given, next.
Thanks, your worship. In council, I promise there won't be as many shareholder resolutions. Actually get the corporation set up. This won't be a frequent item. So resolution 2004-5 is the confirmation of bylaw number 1. To be clear, this is a bylaw of the corporation, not of the municipality of Jasper. And so as the shareholder, the municipality, as a shareholder, you get to express an opinion on the bylaw. And this motion is to support that bylaw for the corporation. Again, this doesn't impact through the general community of the municipality as our other municipal bylaws would. The corporate bylaw number 1 really serves the same purpose though as the municipality's procedure bylaw, in that it establishes the internal rules and regulations governing the operation and management of the corporation, including matters such as shareholder rights, directors' duties, corporate procedures, meeting times, and other items. There is one change from committee, and that was a clarification under item 4.09. It previously said a meeting of the shareholders may be held in the absence of the public. That has been clarified. We consulted with our law firm that's been supporting the development of the bylaw. And it is now a meeting of the corporation may be held in the absence of the public. Of course, under our shareholder policy that we just described, and actually that we're acting in accordance with right now, all decisions of the shareholder are happening in public. As we, as you see them go through committee to council with that written format being provided and signed by the mayor and deputy mayor or council. So in the previous version, it said a meeting of the shareholder may be held in the absence of the public, and of course that can't happen. So this is a description of a meeting of the corporation, and that one change in wording is the only change to the corporate bylaw from committee.
Thank you, Mr. Given. Are there any questions regarding the bylaw? When we get to a motion, I will be supportive. Mr. Given, you can confirm that we have independent counsel who has reviewed all of this and it's consistent in their view with the requirements of the Municipal Government Act.
Yes, Your Worship.
I did note on the last occasion concerns with respect to Article 4.09, which suggests meetings of the public. That's where the word shareholder got changed to corporation. Similarly, 8.07 talks about suggests public meetings, and yet there is nowhere any provision to give any notice to members of the public. I understand that there are processes under the Municipal Government Act that deal with that, and I do note that there is another section 1.05 that says the headings are inserted for convenience and don't mean anything. So even though we talk about public meetings, doesn't necessarily mean what it says. And so on the basis that appears to be consistent with legislation, I'm prepared to support it. But I do find it odd that we twice reference public meetings and yet provide no details of how the public would ever know of the meeting. We go at length to say when it can be in camera under FOIP legislation, but it just seemed to me to be not as detailed as it could be, particularly as the public is potentially at least watching right now. And we get the impression that they might be able to attend meetings of the board of directors. However, I am comforted by the fact that we have independent legal advice and 1.05. Any other comments about the bylaws? Is there a councillor prepared to make a motion with respect to approval of bylaw number 1? Councillor Hall, thank you. If there is no debate, I will call the question in favor of council approving bylaw number 1 for the Jasper Municipal Housing Corporation. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Mr. Given, next.
Next, your worship, is 2004-6 ratification of directors' acts. This essentially acknowledges that corporation was incorporated back in October of last year. And we have this challenge of the concurrent need for an initial shareholder meeting and director organizational meetings. And this resolution ratifies those acts performed after the fact. We kind of essentially have to have a recording of the fact that the shareholder endorsed those directors' acts of forming the corporation back last year.
Thank you for that. In the absence of questions, which would take precedence, I'll look for a motion from the councillor. Councillor Devoted. And that is a motion to ratify director's acts. Resolution 2. Any debate on that motion? All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. And does that leave us with one?
Your worship, that leaves us with one, 2004-7, which acknowledges a change in directorship. So at the October 24th, 2023 organizational meeting, Councillor Malik was moved off of the JCHC board and Councillor Demoda was appointed because the appointments to JCHC translated to an appointment to the JMHC. I believe that was the understanding. We need to file a change of directors form to acknowledge that and formalize it. And so it is important to note that alternates aren't recognized by corporate registries. And so they're not listed as directors. That's a change in practice from the JCHC, where we did have direct alternates for each of the director positions. So this resolution 2004-7 acknowledges that change the council made at the October 24th, 2023 council organizational meeting.
Thank you for that, Mr. Given. Subject to questions, again, I would look to a councillor for a motion. Councillor Melnick.
If appropriate, I would move that council approve resolution 2024-7 authorizing a change in directors.
Thank you, Councillor Melnick. Seeing no hands for debate, I will call the question. All those in favor? None opposed? That's carried. And that takes us to agenda item 6.6, which is slightly different. Given.
Your worship, I promise there will be less JMHC shareholder resolutions going forward after we get the corporation set up. So the recommendation here is that council representing the municipality of Jasper as the sole JMHC shareholder appoint the following individuals to the corporation board of directors. And I'll just highlight for council that there's actually a change. You have just appointed councillors Wilson and Demota, previous shareholder resolutions. And so in the report, you will need to identify the external directors in this resolution. So council will remember that in October of last year, council reviewed and ultimately approved a board skills matrix, identifying the skills that we would look for in board members for the JMHC. Administration advertised the board of director position opportunity from December 21st to January 11th on a number of different platforms. And we saw a very good response. 15 applications for the position were received from both inside Jasper and outside. Applications were reviewed by administration and scored using the skills matrix. And council has had an opportunity to review those scores in order to make this recommendation. So the goal is ultimately to have a well-rounded and effective governing body for the JMHC with specific qualities and areas of expertise contained across all of the candidates. And the recommendation from committee is that council appoint Dean McIsaac, Edward Archibald, Lori Roger, Serge Martin, and Andrea Ziegler to the JMHC Board of Directors for a term from February 20th, 2024 to March 1st, 2026.
Thank you for that, Mr. Given. Is there any questions of administration on councillors? Councillor prepared to make a motion, Councillor DeMorter?
Well, I think it would be more appropriate if somebody else other than Councillor Wilson and I move that. Just, I think it would be self-serving if one of us did that anyway. I wanted to council and administration for getting all the information and processing it all and doing a lot of heavy lifting. I was absent for a lot of this, so I just wanted to congratulate everybody and looking forward to the process if it gets passed.
Thank you for that. Councillor Moda, and in fairness to your question about perceived conflict, I think when Mr. Gibbons started, he acknowledged that the motion is superfluous, doesn't need to again mention yourself and Deputy Mayor Wilson, because we've already taken care of that. So there can be a motion just with respect to the public members. In our previous motion, we had already appointed.
All right, I move the council representing the municipality of Jasper as the sole JMHC shareholder appoint the following individuals to the Jasper Municipal Housing Corporation Board of Directors. Dean McIsaac, Edward Archibald, Lori Roger, Serge Martin, if I said that right, Serge Martin, and Andrea Ziegler. So,
Your worship, and I'm not certain that it matters in terms of corporate registries, but maybe identifying the term so that there's not an opportunity for council to reconsider the reappointment at a defined point in the future. So that's the dates that are at the end of the bullet there.
as recommended, February 20th, 24 to March 1st, 2026.
Thank you for that motion, Councillor DeMona. Councillor Milne.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm glad that that motion was made. Once we vote on the motion, I will make a motion though to formally appoint Councillor Wilson, Councillor DeMota, which will include the terms, just to make this go around the circle, because when we voted on the last motion, there were no terms in that resolution, and I think we'd probably, for the record, want to ensure that we record the terms for Councillor Wilson, Councillor Demota. So happy to vote on this motion and ready to make the next one.
Thank you. Councillor Melnick. I just wish to speak in favor of the motion and to take the opportunity to thank the 5 people who have been identified, but the other 10 people who also applied. They all showed great community interest in serving the community. I want to thank administration for firstly developing the board skills matrix and then applying so well. I think that it really did result in a very objective selection with a number of people with great skills that will complement each other. It'll be a really effective board. So again, I thank all of those who applied. I thank and appreciate the willingness to serve of those who have been selected, and I thank administration. Any other councillors wish to speak to the motion before I call the question? All those in favor? Having none opposed, that is carried. And Councillor Melnick then.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to make the motion that council appoint Councillor Scott Wilson for the term of October 20th, 2023 to November 15th, 2025 to the Jasper Municipal Housing Corporation Board of Directors, and that Councillor Demota be appointed for the term starting October 24th, 2023 to November 15th, 2025.
Thank you, Councillor Melnick. Debate on that motion. I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Gibbon. Mostly seamless. Takes us to agenda item 6.7, Community and Economic Development Policy Review. Director Reid.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. So this item hopefully is as straightforward as Council found it last week still. That Council amend the Community and Economic Development Fund Policy B117 as presented. And this was to correct an administrative oversight. Council that clearly expressed the desire to have the clause that organizations would be ineligible if they've already received funding, and we missed that in our original draft, and so now you have it as you wished it to appear. Any questions? Of course, I'm ready.
Thank you, Director Reid. If there are no questions, I would look to a councillor for a motion. Councillor Calagranti, thank you. That is motion to amend the Community and Economic Development Fund Policy B117 as presented. All those in favor? There are none opposed? That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 6.8. Paid parking 2024. That comes forward as a recommendation from committee of the whole. Whenever that was a week ago. Mr. Gibbon.
Your Worship, the recommendation coming from committee that did require council approval was an actual change to the program with respect to rates. The motion and recommendation from committee was that council increase the paid parking rates to $4.50 per hour on street and $3.50 per hour or $17 a day in parking lots.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbon. Questions of councillors? Councillor Demota.
The only question I have is just in working with agencies or representatives of the business community, which are directly and indirectly affected by parking in front of a lot of the properties in the downtown core, and that's where we have in the commercial core this activity. So I'm just wondering what type of consultation we've done and work with, let's say, the Chamber of Tourism Jasper, for an example, on, you know, how they feel their business owner or their membership feels about, you know, what our threshold is for the market, because we're not market experts and we're not out there feeling things out when it comes down to our traffic, our visitors, and that's who predominantly or rightly pays this fee or these fees. So I'm just wondering, you know, I think we heard at budget time that those agencies would like to have a little bit more consultation when it comes to this. Again, it could be a Jasper partnership thing or have a broader discussion with these groups. I'm just concerned that, again, we might be advancing things without having some consultation in the people that would be more experts and at closer than an arm's length to their membership. Does that make sense?
Thank you, Councillor Attendance. Mr. Kevin?
Your worship, I can just speak to the engagement that administration has had to this point, and certainly up to council to decide whether that's adequate or not. I know that Director Nadon, through the development of the report and the year-end review and evaluation of some potential options, including year-round operations and some estimations of what revenue could be derived, was in consultation with Tourism Jasper to develop some of those numbers. I know that after the committee of the whole meeting last week, I provided an update to the interim CDO of Tourism Jasper about the change that was being recommended forward from committee to council. So he was fully aware before it showed up here. But administration hasn't undertaken a poll of Chamber of Commerce members or of Tourism Jasper members. Certainly, we'd like to work through their representatives. And the other, I guess, portion in the report from committee last week, council was presented with a contrast of the administration proposed rates to those of Banff, Canmore, Drumheller, so like other tourism-based communities. So the council could have a sense of how it compares to other rates that are out there in the market. The recommended rates that are put forward to council from committee are largely in line with what we see out in the marketplace, particularly in Banff and Canmore for their peak period rates.
Thank you, Mr. Given. Councillor Attendance?
Yeah, I think just to clarify, I wasn't really talking about going out to every single member. I was talking about the representatives of those groups. And, you know, just from my position, I would like to, and this is no knock on administration, but to me, at my level, it seems more like a litmus test. Like we've raised the rates and now it's going to be like, we just keep raising them until it's too high. And while they're too high, then we might bring them down again and just kind of test the threshold. And I'm not sure we're there yet. I think that we increased it once and considering the times and the feedback that we've got so far, I would be more in a position to hold the rates as they were for last year and carry on to getting a better analysis. No offense again, and make some more educated decisions that way. That's just my opinion. I'm not saying it's right or wrong.
Thank you, Councillor Attendance. Councillor Kelleher?
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, through you to administration. I believe last year we had a letter from some of the residents on Geeky regarding the parking and the paid parking. I was wondering if we have addressed that, or is that something the council should be considering?
Mayor Ireland, through to Councillor Kelleher MP, thank you for the question. That item is still outstanding. It is still on the motion action list, and it was to be addressed this month in relation to the paid parking report. So that is something that is on my radar, but we haven't completed. And essentially, the nature of the letter was about the fact that Geeky Street in itself was included in the paid parking zone and sort of questioning whether it was warranted or not, is my recollection of what the letter was, so it'd be more in relation to the zones, it's themselves than the rates or any other considerations.
Thank you for that, Ms. Sindel.
Subject to other questions of administration regarding paid parking and particular rates. Is there a councillor prepared to make a motion? Councillor Hall?
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I would make the motion that council increase the paid parking rates to $4.50 an hour on street, $3.50 an hour, or $17 a day in parking lots. And I make this motion, as CEO Gibbon said last week in the agenda, there was a comparison chart that is $5 an hour or 50 cents an hour less. We are, as referred to as a legacy destinations. I feel that we are well within any rate that I don't think we're too high. This visitor paid parking also directly benefits residents in a really positive way, where that money goes to, in part, the Adventure Activity Center, which is getting us accessible new dressing rooms. That in part goes to pay for public transit, which is starting to move our residents around town in a very positive way. That's my motion.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. I'll go to my right first. Deputy Mayor Wilson, and Councillor Keller-Hempy, and then Councillor DeMola.
Yeah, I've always been in support of paid parking, but in the past 2 years, I've been not in support of continually raising the rates without circling back and having a conversation about residential paid parking or residential permits. I think we're missing a bit of the boat, and back when we first started talking about paid parking, one of the benefits to paid parking was to encourage alternate modes of transportation. We haven't done any of that, and so we've just looked at the dollars, and we're looking and seeing that, yeah, this is a substantial amount of revenue that we're making, and oh, can we make more? Can we make more? But we haven't gone back and looked at, how can we encourage residents to choose other forms of transportation? And I'm not in support of raising rates and raising rates and raising rates and just see dollar signs, rather having the larger conversation about how can we encourage residents to choose other transportation to get downtown and to leave their cars at home. So until then, I'm supportive of keeping the rates the same.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. Councillor Keller-Hempy.
Thank you, Mayor, and may I have permission to ask administration one more question? I know we're in debate, but I didn't forget to ask this question. Through you to administration, I'm curious, last year we had a program, the double towels, for paid parking. Will we be keeping like a bulk rate for them, or are we going to put them to the $17 a day?
Your worship, for Councillor Keller-Hempy, so we will continue to have the sort of bulk purchase program. And that program is set up that it actually is trailing the rate, so they'll still be paying last year's rate. And then it would be next year that they would move up to this year's rate. So they get that at least a 1 year notice of the change in that sort of bulk purchase rate.
Thank you for that.
Councillor DeMola.
Yeah, I'm not in favor, and some of it, there's different layers to it. So first of all, I look at Jasper a little different than Canmore and Banff, and the main reason is that it's a further, I know we're a legacy destination, but we're further away from major centers and airports and things like that. So the traffic over there is a lot heavier. Visitation is a lot heavier. They have a bigger captive market than Jasper does. And my train of thought there is just how much it costs in gas, gate fees and everything by the time you get here. I know you have those in Banff, but again, you have to travel a lot further, and there's that exhaustion by the time you get to town, and then you have to deal with the local prices here compared to other areas. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying that's just the reality. There's the argument that it does benefit the initiatives like the activity center and other infrastructure in the community. When I first started embarking with council in the past, looking for alternate sources of revenue from the province. It was questioned on whether we were maximizing all our revenues, and I understand the argument of, you know, the year round and having residents pay as well. And I understand that argument. I don't support it, but I understand it. If the province comes to us today and says, what are you doing to help alleviate your tax dollars here or your tax requisition? How are you maximizing all your revenues? And, you know, the question is, well, we do have paid parking. Then the question might come to what extent, and I don't think that we've maxed everything out, but at the same argument, I want to have a little bit more of a concrete platform in justifying increases and not just attaching arbitrary numbers. And I know they're based on other communities and stuff, but because I feel that we do have some different instances and it's still pretty fresh here, I can't support that without having a little bit more detail in what all this would mean in a grander scheme. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boyd. Councillor Kelleher, go back to you. You may ask a question.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I do support the increase. And I think, and the reason I was one of the ones that suggested a small increases, because I don't believe in going year round because we're not there for winter yet. If we don't increase a little each year, so last year we increased 50 cents, this year or another 50 cents. To suddenly say we don't increase for 2 or 3 years, then suddenly we put it up $3. I think everybody expects everything to increase a little. Also, everywhere you go, you pay for paid parking. And I'm gonna be honest, $4.50, $3.50, it's not a lot of money to pay. People don't mind paying it. Visitors are used to paying it. But I think we need to go every year, increase a little.
Thank you, Councillor Kelleher. Councillor Mellon?
Thank you, Your Worship. Having the rates as proposed set at $4.50 may be an encouragement for people who are in the outlying hotels within the community to use our transit service. So while we may not be using our parking revenue, because we have a transit service which was not in existence last summer, we may find that our ridership is going to be higher because it'll cost only, give or take, $5 to go downtown for 2 people and $5 to come back, same as paid parking. It'll be interesting to see what a full year of transit ridership will look like, given the fact that we, still haven't got full data for that operating year. And I think we're going to need to balance both paid parking and our rates on the transit to be able to ensure that, encouraging people to use other modes of transportation are still affordable. And I look forward to the opportunity where we have the e-bikes, which would be hopefully operating this year from the campsites into the town site, which again may alleviate some of the parking stress. So I think going to where we are is still reasonable. I wouldn't want to go beyond that. And I think we have a year that we have to sit back and analyze what this summer is going to look like with the changes in what transportation modes are available to us.
Thank you, Councillor Melick. Councillor Waxer?
I just wanted to say that I agree with Councillor Kelleher MP and Councillor Melnick, and that if I remember correctly, so some of the administrative recommendations emanated from the amount that we set in the budget for how much we anticipated raising. And so I think if we didn't increase the fees, we would have to look at other ways to generate the revenue to meet our budget targets. So I will vote in favor.
Thank you, Councillor Waxer. Councillor Hall, I'll give you an opportunity to close. You're good. Right, I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? There are two opposed. That motion is carried.
I mean, we made reference to Canadian anthem music earlier, and there's a song by the Tragically Hip that's called "The Lonely End of the Rink." I don't feel so lonely today. Sometimes I am.
Agenda item 6.9, 2024 Communities in Bloom appointments. Mr. Gibbon, I see your name on that.
Well, your worship, my name is on all of the reports. I know that Director Don worked on this item, and so I'll turn it over.
Thank you, your worship. Thank you, CEO Given. We had posted for vacancies on the Communities in Bloom Committee in November and December, as appointments are usually due to start in January. We had not received any applicants, so we tried a bit of a different communication strategy and got some applicants, and they were submitted to the HR committee for review, as is the process that is outlined in the terms of reference for that committee. So the three names that you see today have been reviewed by the HR committee along with the actual applications that were submitted. And that is how this lands before you today. And a bit of a reminder that the Communities in Bloom Committee in this form is newly composed as a formal committee of the Municipality of Jasper, and therefore we'll have some administrative resources dedicated to it from the operations department as well as an appointed councillor. And then this is the piece where we're looking for members of the public to be formally appointed.
Thank you for that, Director Goodall. There are no questions. Is there a councillor prepared to make the motion? Councillor Waxer.
That council appoint Danny Frechette, Sarah Fougere, and Shelley Coble to the Communities in Bloom Committee for a term commencing January 1, 2024 and concluding December 31st, 2025.
Thank you for that motion. Seeing no hands for debate, I will call the question. All those in favor? Or none opposed? That is carried. Again, thanks to those three community individuals who chose to step forward and assist the community in this fashion. Agenda item 7. Notices of motion. Councillor Demota.
Thank you very much. 7.1 was basically regarding some detailed information that I did send out in an email to administration. And it's just, for me, it was just to get a full recap on several motions that we made throughout 2022, starting with 2 years ago on the 22nd of February, and then moving on to May 3rd, September 27th, and June 20th, respectively. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because just following that, and you know, some of us have made motions that are attached to some pretty large amounts of money. And so I think that it would be good to kind of have a little bit of a review on all of those that were in the GEC reports that were kind of recommended as to get approval, and just where we are with those. And I do appreciate that since then that Mr. Gibbon has provided me with some information on the last update that Director Reed had given us on December 12th. So that information is there for people in the community that have been asking me questions on some of those items. But I just think it would be a healthy update to get some, just to get an update on all those things that were recommended by the architects in that time, and where we're at in the placements of those, just because of the direct attachment of those dollars. Does that make sense? And so I was going to put forward a motion for a council to direct administration to come back with a detailed report on those items. Is it? So I was gonna ask, I guess, to administration, what would be an ideal time frame if that request is clear?
We, administration has been following practice of bringing updates, I think, pretty regularly on a quarterly basis. I know Director Reed was planning on bringing his next one in March, so to close out the end of the first quarter of the year, so towards the end of March, we'd have that update. I guess the updates so far, and you can see the template in that December 12th and previous ones that have been presented to council. You can see sort of the update about the projects that were underway during that period, areas of caution, areas of concern, as well as sort of the financial reconciliation of where we are in terms of the overall project budget. If there were specific items that council wanted an update on, it might be helpful to identify what those were. Or if that report doesn't contain the right level of detail, by all means, if we were aware of what level of detail council was looking for, we'd be happy to include that in the quarterly reports.
So
Go ahead.
could that be in informal notice of motion then for following committee or council meeting for more information? So we just have a date in March that might come, right? Right now? Okay. I'll just look forward to that then, and then I'll have my questions ready if I have them. And
And in fairness, and I don't want to be too sticky on the rules. Notices of motion on our agenda are intended to allow councillor to give notice that they intend at a future meeting to bring forward a notice of motion. So not necessarily for today's meeting. So on the basis of the responses you've got, you can be in a position, and we have noticed that you intend to bring forward a motion. If you get sufficient information, maybe you won't.
exactly.
We have that notice.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Similarly, I'm sorry, Councillor Hall.
Set up that question. Would we be able to get another tour of the inside?
Well, your worship, funny enough, tours are sort of a hot commodity lately. So administration, the town of Hinton is, I think, doing a council and administration retreat in Jasper. They pick great places to go. Happy to see them supporting the local economy. They've actually requested a tour of the facility this Saturday. So administration is working with them to do that because they're considering some renovations to their facilities. Certainly, if there are members of council that would like to join that tour, in fact, I think not only would they be welcomed, I think that would be really appreciated. And so we can follow up after the meeting for any members of council that would like to join that tour.
Thank you for that. Councillor Devoda, agenda item 7.2.
Yeah, well, I guess I can bring this up as a notice of motion, and it's only particularly, I was grateful to be able to be here today. But as in a previous role of, similar structure when I had started with another company years back in 2014, there was a little bit of a training and learning curve with that company, and I was a little absent every now and then from council. And as we try to prioritize our lives, sometimes you don't want your work life or your family life to overlap each other, and it's recommended that we try our hardest not to. And my priority right now is to get up to speed as best I can with my new employment, and that might get me on the road quite a bit more. And sometimes I get curveballs on Tuesdays. So in the last 8 weeks, I've missed all of the regular meetings up until today, which I was grateful to make. But the MGA says that councillors are disqualified if a councillor is absent for all regular meetings during any period of 8 consecutive weeks, starting from the first meeting that is missed, unless subsection 2 applies, and subsection 2 is the resolution of council to excuse that councillor. So I was hoping to make that motion today, but if that section right now doesn't allow me to do so, I can prepare that for another meeting date. Hopefully one that I can make and I'm not called away for, but I've been given an opportunity to add on my work territory, and that will take me out of town occasionally, but not too far because it's Hinton. So I'm looking forward to that. So I just wanted to make sure my ducks were in a row and the council was okay with me taking that time away if need be. So I won't put that, I don't think I have to put that together today because I didn't make it, but in the future I might have to ask for this. So I was just letting you know in advance. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor DeBoer. That takes us into agenda item, sorry. Deputy Mayor Wilson.
Yeah, it's not a notice of motion, but something got brought up prior to the meeting. I didn't have time to go through the minutes to speak to it within the minutes, but would you allow me to go back to the minutes just so we can have some clarification about a couple of the meetings that we've had? So just looking for clarification from administration. I think some councillors might feel like we missed something last meeting. But I think going back, so I'm talking about Jasper Crisis team. And we've been kind of plagued with some progress with that, with them and that item. And I just want to be super clear that we're moving forward in a productive manner. Just going back in the minutes to the January 23rd Committee of the Whole, there is a passed motion by Mayor Ireland, number 4024. Where is that now? That reads, Mayor Ireland made the motion that committee authorized administration to enter into a F-104 funding agreement with the crisis team Jasper Society for development and implementation of a crisis team advocate recruitment and training program, substantially in the form presented at the committee of the whole meeting in January 23rd. So I guess no reason to go to council yet. We did have the crisis team here last committee of the whole. We discussed this motion and they had requested that it not be so restrictive and meaning that the funds would only be used for implementation of a crisis team advocate recruitment training program because they have gone another direction. And so during last meeting, last week, we had, I think we were under the understanding that this was going to be in front of us again. It doesn't look like it needed to be, yet this money, which is the $25,000, has been approved to go to the Jasper Crisis team, yet they would like to have used it for the work that they have already done in 2002 and 2003, I think it was, or I might have my years wrong. So do we need to direct administration to we asked the question last week, said no, it didn't look like there was any further direction needed, yet I think we're missing something here because it was clear in the conversation last week that they would like to use that money for works that has already been done, not to implement a crisis team advocate recruitment and training program.
Your worship, yeah, I can, first I want to apologize to council. There's these two motions close together dealing with the same group and similar money for similar things, not the same, obviously. And perhaps the naming of them could have been a little bit clearer for everybody's easier reference. As Councillor Wilson identified, motion 40/24 dealt with the $25,000 in monies from 2022 and 2023. The key deliverables there were exactly as Councillor Wilson identified, and the motion was substantially in the form presented to committee full. So administration didn't believe that there's any additional motion needed. We heard from the organization last week about what they wished. We certainly have direction already from council to develop that F-104 and have the conversation with the group. I think if there was any substantive difficulty in administration, proceeding with that, then we would be able to, we would have to come back. I don't foresee any. I think the question is really around motion 39/24, which is the previous motion that was defeated and deals with money for 2024. My understanding of the conversation at the committee of the whole back January 23rd was that council wished to hear from the organization and before deciding on what the sort of outcomes or deliverables would be. And so that work is still outstanding. The money for 2024 is in the budget. It really is just rests on council defining the objectives that you'd like to see from that money for 2024. I don't know if Director Reid has anything to add. I know that he has been in conversation with the group. They have put forward some potential revisions to some of the key deliverables or the terms of the F-104 agreements. But the status right now is that council has given direction to administration to proceed with, I'm just going to say, an agreement for the 2023 and 2022 money, $25,000. We can certainly work with the group in terms of the key deliverables. And we feel that we have that go ahead from council. What council hasn't provided is what you see as the key deliverables for 2024 going forward. And administration, we have had the opportunity to, as said, Director Reid's in dialogue with the organization. They presented last week. I would imagine that administration will be coming forward with an updated agreement for 2024, where we'll identify to you what we believe the key objectives should be. We'll have the opportunity to try to incorporate sort of the comments of the organization, and council have the opportunity to decide if those objectives are what's required from the community or not.
Sorry, just before you go, and thank you for that. No, yeah, my concern was mainly the 25,000. I know that the 2024 is still in the works, and that's totally fine. And just to be clear too, I think they brought to us the deliverables that were already required for 2022 and 2023. So I just want to make sure that, we believe that they did the work. They've shown us that they've done the work, and we as council, I think, would like to get that money to them, not set more requirements.
Yeah, your worship. So with respect to the 2022 and 2023, and I stand to be directed, but the organization administration didn't have clarity on the organization during those years. And my understanding is that the money was provided to the Jasper Community Team Society. So there never was an agreement between the Municipality of Jasper and the crisis team, right? Just to define that organization. For 2022 and 2023, the agreement and the transfer of funds in terms of the organizations that were involved, the Municipality of Jasper and the Jasper Community Team Society. The Community Team Society, I believe, and I think council also understood at the time, was going to use that money for a certain purpose. And they may have done that through another organization, but the municipality wasn't a party to that relationship between the Jasper Community Team Society and the Jasper Crisis Team. So just like if we keep in that idea that there are three organizations that we're discussing for 2022 and 2023, the Municipality of Jasper only had an agreement with one of them, the Jasper Community Team Society.
The motion that we made, 4024, was with Jasper Crisis Team, and that 25,000 was to go to them. That, yes, we can talk about, the intricacies of what happened in 2022 and 2023, but it was to protect because there was some upheaval going on, although it was for the work that Jasper Crisis Team was doing. JCH, TS, or whatever, that money went to them, but it was to go to crisis. And we have made the motion that $25,000 is approved to go to Jasper Crisis Team.
I think that, your worship, I think that accurately reflects exactly what motion 40-24 is. And administration would acknowledge the same, that the difference is that the municipality didn't enter into any relationship or define any outcomes in 2022 and 2023. That aside, the F-104 that was presented to council and supported by council in 40-24 did identify some, and administration is really trying to find ways to identify some outcomes that the group said that they were meeting back then, so we can provide them money. But the group says, actually, we did something different for reasons. I think administration is equally comfortable in writing that in if council is willing to support it. That, you know, council has given direction that we should enter into an F-104 in terms substantially the same as were presented. We're fine with that. And if there's anything that it appears to be contrary to the direction given by committee, then we would bring it back. But I don't foresee that there would be. Again, administration doesn't have any concern about the past year's monies. We have clear direction, go enter into a F-104. The thing that hasn't been approved by council or council hasn't had a chance to give clear direction is the 2024 and forward money.
Yeah, and I'm not concerned.
Councillor Kelleher.
Thank you, Mayor, and Councillor Wilson have addressed it. I'm just was wondering if we needed to make a new motion, because last week I found it very clear that when the grant scheme team came and presented, they said, you know, they reported to the Jasper community team. They outlaid in their presentation last week what they did on behalf of Crisis. They need that money to rebuild. They have already invested money in training. So they have drawn down all the reserves, and they were saying they needed that 25,000 from us to rebuild their reserves. And I think it's very important that we get it to them.
Question I have is whether the wording in the motion talking about purpose, $25,000 for implementation of crisis team advocate recruitment and training program. When it presented a week ago, they said we're going in a different direction. We don't need money for advocate recruitment and training. We need it for other purposes. And so agree that the motion goes on to say substantially in this form, but is administration feeling bound by those words, advocate recruitment and training program? Or could you use other words and still be comfortable that it's in substantially the form of the F-104 that we saw? I have the same question as Councillor Kelleher. Do we need to change the motion? Because at the time, the request was specific for advocate recruitment and training. Yet when we heard from the presenter on February 13th, that was no longer the way they intended to go. They're looking at a more professional, fewer people doing more professional sort of work. And so we had authorized the release of $25,000 for a particular purpose, which is no longer the purpose that they need. And so from your position in administration, do we need to change that motion to give you better clarity that whatever their current need is, that's what the money can?
Your worship, if council wanted to provide direct, a clearer motion to administration that we should release the 2023 and 2022 funds for whatever purpose the the crisis team Jasper Society needs the funds for, then you could simply make that motion. Absolutely, and administration can provide that direction. Obviously, council would have the benefit of hearing from the organization on January 23rd. But if the intent from council is to say previous year's money is money that the group was counting on, there was one description of what they had intended to do, but they've done something different. And so council's fine with releasing that $25,000 to them, recognizing that they've done whatever, whichever approach they've chosen to take. That's absolutely within your right. I think from an admin perspective, we will develop, we're required to develop an F-104 funding agreement with the group. The F-104 funding agreement is intended to identify, so what the group's responsibilities are. And if they're essentially, if the responsibilities are all in retrospect or sort of saying, well, you did whatever you did over those 2 years, and we're happy to work with this money, then we can just say that for services rendered. Or administration could bring a revised, if we're feeling that the for services rendered approach is maybe starting to be substantially different than the form that was presented on January 23rd, administration could also return with a revised agreement for council's consideration. Like it's not clear to me that all members of council are fully supportive of, of that level of ambiguity in terms of the expectations for the dollars. And I think that that's the intent of the policy. The policy says when we provide funds, we need to spell out what those funds are for. If council would like us to return with the F-104 agreement as previously directed for the $25,000, we can certainly do that and show you what those updated ones would be based on the presentation from the organization. Council would have a chance to approve that or at least to consider it. And then still council will also have to face a decision around, okay, for the 12,500 for 2024, what are the expectations that you would see from it?
Councillor Voda.
Well, I have a suggestion. Maybe for the next committee of the whole, have this as an item to discuss to, if anybody wants to bring it up, I guess, and deal with those specific things that CEO Given has spoken to about the past monies, and take direction on it. I think having another week to just contemplate, if we had another group that came to us and said that we're gonna, let's say, build something, and they didn't use it to build something and they used it for online marketing, or we're gonna use it for online marketing, and that wasn't, what we said yes to, would we be okay with that? And I know that different groups have a different weight when it comes to our emotions and what they do for the community. And I think this group is important for the community, but it's a matter of weighing out what's fair for everybody and what they have a clear understanding what that money was intended for. And then if council's okay with making adjustments, if that didn't fit into what the picture was painted for it, or how the picture was painted for us. I think it's worthy of the conversation. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. The money's there. It's been moved to reserves, or we have it back now, correct? So, and then I think it's just a matter of somebody making an argument on their behalf and wanting to do something with it if you want to do something with it. So I know it's different. It could be different for different groups, but I'm willing to support a good argument. If it's going to benefit the community, these people for what they want to do it for, then I'm willing to hear about it.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. We did hear about it last week. Like we had a pretty good conversation about it, and I think most of us were satisfied with it because the vote carried. I mean, you probably weren't here, though, were you? No, you were here. Oh, yeah. So I felt satisfied with that conversation. I'm not really sure where to go with this, but I would like them to see that money.
I am contemplating a motion, I can relinquish the chair. Just looked at our procedural bylaw, and so a motion to rescind or amend a previous motion is supposed to be in writing, explaining the reasons. I don't have time for that. However, if there isn't time for that, with 2/3 majority, council can approve a motion to amend a previous motion. And my thought is to make a motion to amend motion 40/24 to replace that purpose clause for development and implementation of a crisis team advocate recruitment and training program with other more general words, so that that is not an impediment to administration signing an F1. So the motion would still require enter into an F104 with respect to previously allocated funds in 22 and 23, but without strings attached. That would be my intent. So I would need, firstly, 2/3 majority to allow me to do it, because I'm not going to take the time to put it all in writing, but here we are. It's somewhat emergent. So and that gives you some direction. So if I relinquish the chair, firstly, canvas to see if there's 2/3 that are agreeable to having a motion to amend a motion previously adopted. Oh, and the other thing is, we can't do it if there has been irrevocable actions. And I assume there isn't any irrevocable action. So with that, I will relinquish the chair to Deputy Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, councillors. Are there any motions arising?
I will make a request to introduce a motion under our procedural bylaw to amend a motion previously approved. My reasons are not in writing, and I would therefore require a 2/3 majority of council in order to proceed.
Okay, I'll look for, so we're looking for four votes, I think.
I respect what the mayor's doing, so I'm going to support that.
Everybody understand the motion? Yes. I'll call the question. All in favor? You're not opposed? You.
If I may then, I move that council amend the motion previously approved as motion number 4024 to read as follows. That council authorize administration to enter into F104 funding agreement with the Crisis Team Jasper Society in respect to funds allocated in 2022 and 2023 to the Community Team Society, substantially in the form presented at the Committee of the Whole meeting January 23rd, 2024. And I make this motion on the basis that on January 23rd, I made the motion. I was under the impression, as I think was council, that the crisis team did in fact have a desire to take those funds from 2022 and 2023 and apply them to advocate recruitment and training, but their needs have now changed, and in fairness to them, deleting that requirement and just opening up the allocation of those funds subject to entering into an F104 agreement is what had been the intent of the council. That's my motion.
Thank you for that. Councillors, do you understand the motion? Would any councillors like to speak to the motion? Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. Understanding the motion is to enter into a F-104. Based on the discussions last week, I just want to clarify the dollar amount that we're speaking to because I didn't hear that specifically in the motion. And if I missed it, my apologies.
Reference funds allocated in 2022 and 2023 each year in the amount of $12,500. So a total of $25,000.
Thank you for that, councillors. Nothing further, I'll call the question. All in favor? You're not opposed, that motion carries. Thank you for that, councillors, administration. Appreciate it. You may have the chair.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson, and thank you for bringing it to our attention rather than put language for another meeting. All right, agenda item 8, councillor reports. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I attended a library board meeting last week on February 13th, which was quite productive. And I learned that their loss rate for lost books, 46 out of 18,000. They have a loss rate of 0.0025%. So I thought I'd like to share that with you, with council, because I thought that was very exciting. And I know a lot of us on this council like numbers. And well, that was a very good number.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Your Worship. There's a potential for a Alberta, Japan, and Twin City meeting this evening. Just waiting on the Zoom coordinates to be able to attend that meeting. It'll be virtual, of course.
Thank you, Councillor Melnick. I will report, I hope briefly. Councillor, pardon me, Deputy Mayor Wilson and I attended the West Yellowhead Regional Waste Management Authority Board meeting last Wednesday. And I'm really happy to report that we got information from the operator of the landfill that they have been able to divert about 1,500 mattresses from the landfill. It's not yet 100% diversion, but he's working on 100%. And so Jasper has a disproportionate number of mattresses that go to the landfill, and they're horrible landfill material. They're soft and full of air. They don't compress, and there's bad stuff. But he has found a way and machine to rip them apart and recycle a bunch of it. So we'll have, I think, a significant impact. So it was really good news. We are in the process of completing another cell at the landfill, and that comes at a cost of $6 million. So you don't want to be filling them up needlessly. So I thought a really good advance at the local regional level with respect to mattresses. I ended with Councillor Demota and Councillor Hall this morning, the legislative committee meeting, and work is progressing in some matters that come to our strategic session this month. And you may be aware, last week, Premier and Cabinet were in town. I sort of self-invited myself out to the lodge on Wednesday to hear the Premier's announcement with respect to the tourism strategy, that the provincial tourism strategy that was unveiled. Some of us had a prior look at that at the TIA conference in Edmonton the previous week, but it's now an official document. And because I happened to be in the room, I was able to intercept the Premier on the way out and had a a one-on-one chat with her, which has been reported locally, and I found the answers really encouraging for attendees, the recognition of Jasper and Banff as independent cases, tourism-based communities in particular. So it was a great opportunity to have been in the room. I thought good things came out of it. And so keep watch. There is some local press on that is worth reading. See. Councillor Roger.
Last Wednesday evening, I attended the Alberta Health consultation on the unified health system and the way that they're intending to roll out the new structure. They had 6 basic questions that I'll read out, and then provide an opportunity for the public, if they were interested, to go to alberta.ca Shape the Way to provide some input in that way. But the questions were: what are the strengths in the system today? What's not working? How can the new organizations based on primary care, continuing care, acute care, and mental health and addictions work together? How can a government hold the new organizations accountable? And what does local decision-making look like? And what supports can help the healthcare workforce? So these are very important questions for the future of healthcare in our province and in our community. I was happy to be a part of that conversation, and would encourage all other councillors to go to that website and submit some feedback. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Waxer, Councillor Kelleher.
Last Tuesday, Mayor Ireland, Councillor Waxer and Councillor Malik and I attended the HICONI meeting. And just a brief update, we'll have more information coming forward mid-March. We're currently putting together an agenda for what will be happening in HICONI, and also working with Tourism Jasper, maybe Travel Alberta on the sales mission on their side.
Deputy Mayor Wilson.
Yeah, just in a little bit extra to the West Yellowhead Regional Waste Management Authority. You touched on the cell 8 construction, and just to update that the cell is delayed in completion, but it's on track to be complete by May 31st of this year.
Thank you for that. If there are no other councillor reports, we can go to agenda item 9, upcoming events. Tomorrow, which we are hosting. Jasper Park Chamber of Commerce General Meeting tomorrow morning. Coldest night of the year coming up on Saturday. Strategic priorities review at the end of the month. And Franco Albertan flag raising March 8th at 10:45 a.m. at the Renovation. Are there any other upcoming meetings not on the list that councillors ought to be aware of? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Your Worship. Annually, we have the opportunity to attend the FCM meeting, and the dates there are June 6 to 9 in Calgary. The reason I bring it up is that I'm not certain if we have any councillors who have committed yet to attending that meeting. Being in our home province, it does cut down on travel costs quite a bit, but something for us to consider.
Thank you for that reminder. Any other events, Councillor Waxer?
Not another event, but just a shameless plug for the coldest night of the year. Having sat in on those meetings, I know that both organizations are absolutely stretched, given the challenging winter we've had. I know in terms of the food bank and the Caring Community Fund, they've been absolutely stretched to the limit. And at this point, the fundraising on the coldest night of the year is significantly behind where it was last year. So just to put in a plug that this is a very important fundraiser for keeping those organizations going when they are supporting the residents in a very vulnerable time.
We have some out of town residents doing a tour here on Saturday. Gonna hook some more people in. Isn't Hinton here, council? Are they staying late? Are they staying overnight? You want to do a walk with us?
Did exactly. I worship through to Councillor Demoto. That's an excellent idea. And I actually started the offer of the tour, or rather the idea of us allowing them to have a tour with, if you do it that day, then perhaps you could stay late and go walk and help fundraise. And so they are actively contemplating that. I know that my counterpart in Hinton is either creating a team or going to join one of our teams, something along those lines. I don't think it's firmed up, but your idea is solid and they are investigating.
Thank you.
All right, having disposed of the agenda item now. Welcome. And Councillor Melnick, who won't get a chance to make a motion to extend beyond 4 hours, maybe you can get on the record as another way. Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Your Worship. It appears that we've come to the end of an agenda in near record time of 2 hours and 1 minute, and I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you for that motion. All those in favor? None opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all in the room, and thank you to all who joined on our channel. Appreciate it, and we will be back in session 9:30. 27. What I forgot to mention, just in passing, that in 2007, the United Nations General Assembly declared February 20th as World Day for Social Justice. So as much social justice as we tried to achieve here today, we can go and do more balance of the day and every day beyond. So thank you all. Thanks for joining us. See you next week.